Have you ever found yourself overwhelmed by a heavy, almost invisible pressure? One that doesn't seem to have a clear cause? You're trying to stay focused, stay positive, and do what you believe is right. But somehow, confusion creeps in, relationships strain, and nothing feels easy. You might dismiss it as stress, coincidence, or just a rough patch. But what if it's something much deeper? Most people think spiritual battles are loud, obvious, and rare, reserved for extreme cases like demonic encounters or life-shattering crises. That's the common belief. It's easy to imagine spiritual warfare as something dramatic, something far away from the day-to-day struggles of life. But the truth is, spiritual battles rarely announce themselves. They don't always show up with flashing signs. Often they sneak in subtly, through negative thoughts, unexplained discouragement, constant conflict, or mental exhaustion. If you're not trained to recognize these signs, you'll keep fighting surface-level problems and miss the real battle happening underneath. So, whether you've been feeling drained, confused, or like life's stacking up against you, stay with me. The first sign we'll talk about might explain why you've been feeling spiritually stuck and how to break free from it. Ready? Let's jump into it. The first and most common sign that you're in a spiritual battle shows up right here, in your mind. Have you ever caught yourself spiraling in endless negative thoughts? Thoughts filled with doubt, fear, unworthiness, or the sense that you're failing no matter how hard you try? It might seem like overthinking or anxiety, but this is often the battlefield where the enemy strikes first. Why the mind? Because your thoughts shape your reality. Proverbs 23:7 says, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." If the enemy can control your thought patterns, planting seeds of fear, discouragement, or confusion, he doesn't need to do much else. You'll start limiting yourself, questioning your faith, and eventually sabotaging your own progress without realizing why. The strategy here is to recognize that not every thought is yours. The Bible calls the enemy the father of lies, John 8:44, meaning his primary weapon is deception. You have to become intentional about filtering every thought through God's truth. Ask yourself, is this thought from God, from myself, or from an enemy trying to derail me? One powerful tool is what Paul teaches in 2 Corinthians 10:5. Take every thought captive to obey Christ. This isn't just a metaphor. When you catch a negative or fearful thought, stop and challenge it immediately. Speak scripture over it. Replace the lie with a promise from God. For example, when fear tells you you're not enough, replace it with Philippians 4:13, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." It's like renewing your mental armor daily. The more you practice, the faster you'll catch these toxic thoughts before they take root. Over time, you'll notice how much clearer, lighter, and focused your mind feels, because you're no longer carrying the weight of thoughts that were never meant for you in the first place. So if lately you've been stuck in cycles of self-doubt, fear, or overthinking, understand, it's not random. It's a sign you're under spiritual attack. But now, you have a strategy to fight back. Next, let's talk about another overlooked sign, one that might be affecting the people around you more than you realize. Have you ever noticed that just when you're trying to focus on your purpose or grow spiritually, conflicts start popping up out of nowhere? Maybe it's tension with family, misunderstandings with friends, or sudden arguments over small things. It feels like people around you are against you, and relationships you value become fragile without explanation. Here's what many people miss. Not every conflict is about the other person. Often, strained relationships are a symptom of spiritual battles happening behind the scenes. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and spiritual forces of evil." The enemy loves to use division, offense, and misunderstandings to isolate you and drain your energy. Why? Because community is one of your greatest spiritual defenses. The more isolated and frustrated you become, the easier it is to get discouraged and give up. That's why when conflicts increase without clear reason, you need to pause and look beyond the surface. So what's the strategy? First, recognize the real enemy isn't the person in front of you. When conflicts arise, take a step back and pray for discernment. Ask God, is there something spiritual happening here? Rather than reacting emotionally, respond spiritually. Pray over the situation and for the person involved. Speak peace and restoration over the relationship. Additionally, stay aware of offense. Offense is one of the enemy's favorite traps. He wants you to hold grudges, stay bitter, and break unity. But Proverbs 19:11 says, "It is to one's glory to overlook an offense." Choose forgiveness quickly. When you refuse to let conflict take root, you disarm one of the most effective strategies of spiritual attack. So if you've noticed tension in your relationships, unresolved conflicts, or feelings of isolation creeping in, it's not random. It might be a sign of a deeper battle. But the good news? You have the authority to respond differently, guard your peace, and keep your relationships strong. In the next chapter, we'll uncover another subtle but powerful sign that many overlook, one that could be draining your strength without you even realizing. Have you ever felt spiritually tired for no clear reason? Not just physically exhausted, but drained in your soul, like your prayers feel dry, reading the Bible feels heavy, and even simple tasks take more effort than usual. It's as if the fire inside you is slowly flickering out, and no matter how much rest you get, it doesn't seem to refill your spirit. This kind of weariness is another major sign of spiritual battles. Isaiah 40:31 says, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength." The key word here is renew, because spiritual battles are designed to wear you down, making you too tired to pray, too tired to worship, and too tired to fight back. The enemy knows that if he can drain your spiritual energy, you'll eventually lose sight of your purpose. So how do you overcome spiritual exhaustion? The strategy is both simple and powerful. Retreat to recharge. Jesus himself often withdrew to quiet places to pray and reconnect with the Father. Luke 5:16. Sometimes the battle isn't won by pushing harder. It's won by stepping back, resting in God's presence, and allowing Him to restore you. This might mean carving out intentional time for worship, fasting, or simply sitting in silence before God. You don't always need more activity. You need more connection. Psalm 23:3 says, "He restores my soul." It's in that restoration where your spiritual strength is renewed, your vision becomes clear again, and the heaviness begins to lift. Also, be aware of distractions. When you're spiritually drained, it's easy to numb yourself with entertainment, scrolling, or busyness. But these things often leave you feeling emptier. Instead, lean into practices that actually fill you. Time in the Word, prayer, and being around other believers who can speak life into you. So if you've been feeling spiritually empty, disconnected, or just off, don't ignore it. Recognize it as a sign of spiritual warfare designed to weaken you. But remember, you don't fight exhaustion by doing more. You fight it by returning to the one who strengthens you. The battle may be real, but so is your victory when you're anchored in God's presence.